House, members of Parliament, thank you for coming here supporting. For our opposition team, it's awesome just to be able to have this opportunity to debate, and for my member of government, let's go right into it. The resolution today is that the USFG, or the United States federal government, should condition its foreign aid to Israel on the condition that it stops building settlements in West Bank. Our first step, or part one, is going to be definitions. You'll find that all our definitions are contextually defined. Next step, part two, is going to be criteria. Criteria will be weighing this around as far as net benefit. And then our third part should offer a quick background, part three. Now, the background is from the Jimmy Carter administration to the end of the Clinton administration. The U.S. carried out this plan. They had the exact same, criteria that as the resolution states. During that time, there wasn't all the conflict and war that we see in the West Bank. So we have historically proven that this is a method that will work and that will decrease the violence. Well, West Bank being, of course, a section in Palestine that Fatah controls. Now, ever since the Bush administration, the very beginning of the Bush administration, Bush changed this to unconditional aid, and since then, war and violence has increased. Now, in the peace talks to try to decrease this violence, the key demand of the Palestinian people, is to end the settlement building. Moving on to our plan. Our plan is the resolution. The USFG should condition its foreign aid to Israel on the condition that it stops building settlements in the West Bank. The funding is normal means for appropriating funds to Israel, and the enforcement is the DOS, the Department of State, and the DOD, the Department of Defense. Moving on to our very first advantage. Our very first advantage is going to be tagline, Israeli West Bank peace. Now, my A sub-point, which is the harm. The Fatah is making amends with Israel in the status quo. They are cooperating with Israel, working towards this peace. This is something that they want. They're one of the better agents for peace in this area. However, the second harm is that the people of Palestine demand that the Fatah government stop giving in to these settlement buildings. It has been one of the key demands, as I said in the background, and it remains one of the key demands today. The next argument for harms is that there is a power-sharing deal right now between Hamas and Fatah for new elections set in November, and these elections will be electing a leader from either group to control both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. If, therefore, the settlement building does not stop and continues, these people that want their main concern is that this building will stop, will be voting for Hamas, for a government or for a leadership that they feel is more strongly representing their desires and their needs. Therefore, my B sub-point, the solvency or link. The plan bolsters the political credibility of Fatah. All right, the C sub-point, the eternal link, is that Israel hasn't been at war with Fatah for 10 years now. The second argument with that is that Fatah is the best hope for no more attacks allegiance between Fatah and Israel. And then my next point under the internal link is that this keeps Hamas from gaining tax revenue to attack Israel, because by stopping those settlements, it will increase as I said in my link, increase the political credibility of Fatah, which will be keeping Hamas out of the house and keeping them from taking control, gaining that access to that tax revenue to attack Israel, to continue their weapons building, and continue amassing more funds and arms to attack Israel and to attack their enemies. This leads me to my D sub-point, which is impact. The plan will therefore prevent another war, because as I just clearly painted out, if Hamas takes control, this is only going to lead to further conflict, further battles, further deaths in this area. Okay, it will also decrease. It's going to decrease collateral damage if there's no more war. This is going to be a decrease in infant mortality rates, as there's random bombings or attacks, or families being killed. There's going to be a decrease in femicide, which always happens in any times of war, in any collateral damage, and this will all come as a result of the decrease in Hamas strength, which is one of the main reasons that we have violence in the West Bank today. Moving on to my second advantage, which will be tagline, is Israeli hegemony. Now my A sub-point, which is the harm, is that right now in status quo, Israel hegemony is declining due to the war crimes that it has committed in the past in the West Bank. I'm sorry, let me check. In the West Bank. However, my second point in the harms is that in the last offensive, in the most recent offensive in January, is that Israel polarized the Middle East, because in that offensive, Saudi Arabia and Egypt actually sided with Israel and took their side and opposed Iran and aided them in that battle. This leads me to my B sub-point, which is the length or solvency. That an increase, this will therefore lead to an increase in Israeli soft power. Okay, because if we're taking them out of the West Bank, which is where they're committing all the war crimes anywhere, therefore taking out the ability to commit these war crimes and have the support of both Egypt and Saudi Arabia, that's going to increase their soft power instead of increasing their reactionary or pure military power, which only leads to a more hostile situation. The next point, my next argument in the B sub point is that this will increase its population with allies, most namely Saudi Arabia and Egypt, which is very important because right now both Egypt and Saudi Arabia are discussing Middle East peace. And this is one of their main goals. Saudi Arabia wants this. This is one of their big concerns at this point. They're trying to attain that peace. So this is a good step. My C subpoint, then, the internal link, is that by expanding Israel's hegemony, the likelihood this decreases, therefore, the likelihood of bombing Iran. And I'll show you this by my two arguments underneath the C subpoint, which is that Saudi Arabia and Egypt are very key to keeping pressure on Iran. Iran will be much more likely to attack Israel if none of its neighbors are even opposing it. With this opposition, it decreases that likelihood huge. My next argument is it keeps Israel from feeling trapped, which is another reason of why they usually attack. When they feel like the whole world is closing around them, they're going to bite back. So between the combination of their increased soft power and the increased relations they have between Egypt and Saudi Arabia, this will decrease it. That leads me to my D sub point, which is my impact. This is going to prevent a regional war, therefore, because if Israel goes to power, the U.S. is on Israel's side. We know that, and that's the way it has been. That's the way they continue to state it. And if Palestine goes to war, Iran is going to be fighting with them, and then there's a possibility that Russia will be fighting them with them also, which means that you now have two huge powers with nuclear capability fighting each other over a nuclear war, which can lead to the Third World War, a nuclear fallout, and this whole thing erupting into a war that none of us can afford. For these advantages, you can see why you should be voting Dove. Thank you.